Welcome to the Empowering Choices podcast. My name is Joshua.
Oh, oh, oh.
Yeah.
Eric,
We're sitting here singing before this starts, and he goes with a ho, ho, ho.
why not? I think I saw a comment in a recent video where someone said Woofy said something, and I was like, Woofy? But it was because it was the episode where we reviewed the Bluey, and you woofed at the beginning. So they were just
my God. That was apparently my name I think for the commenter.
Yeah, it was a great comment, though.
So Woofy says ho, ho, ho today.
There we go.
Ho, ho, ho.
Really mangle those inside jokes.
Ho, 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 and Eric, our licensed professional counselor.
Oh, God. Thank you.
Can we now put that up there, the thing?
Yes,
ho, 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 and Eric.
And today's episode is going to be a good one. It's called He Sees You When You're Sleeping.
That was freaking terrifying out of context.
That does.
Wow.
But I have
I think we
questions.
should start pressing charges.
True. I have questions about Santa Claus. And that's really
I
what
like
this
how that's
is
just
about.
the impetus for this entire episode.
is.
Josh is like, I want to ask counselors about Santa Claus.
Yeah.
Oh, but we've got to get a little backstory here. I mean, because a lot of this hour to be able to get ready for this we are recording today because I have questions about Santa Claus.
Exactly.
I don't care what we have to use. If we have to
We
go
had some technical difficulties.
if we have to go back to 8-track, we are doing this.
Definitely not what he said.
Well, he was close. He would have said
I didn't
that.
want to miss the opportunity.
Yeah. Okay.
So
what are your questions about?
So before you ask the questions, content warning for our audience. If your children are listening, you may not want them to because they may hear some things about Santa Claus that you may not want them to hear in case we talk about whether or not he's real.
And why would we not want them to hear it? Is what? Are you? Okay. we'll get there. Okay, so we recorded an episode where we talked about boogeyman parenting.
Yeah.
And we were talking about like the idea of the boogeyman and that, it may not be the best idea to make kids think that there's some thing that exists, this magical thing that's going to do something to you. And then, we talked a little bit about Santa Claus. Well, here's all my Santa
was the
Claus.
segue.
That's a segue. So here's my Santa Claus question. So I think that it's like a tension for me because we have a 18-month-old, 19-month-old boy. And my wife did not grow up with the idea that there's a Santa Claus. I grew up thinking that there was a Santa Claus and I would leave him milk and cookies. And I understand a little bit of both sides. On one hand, yes, you don't want to lie to a child and set up a scenario where they someday go, well, if you told me that and that's not true, then I don't believe anything else. On the other hand, there's like Mr. Rogers and imagination and fun. And for me, it was like such a fun, magical thing. But then I just kind of like slowly figured it out. And there never was a moment where I was like, oh, my parents were mean to me. They lied to me. I was like, oh, well, they were doing like a fun thing for me as a kid. So as counselors, Santa? Can we have Santa?
Can we have Santa?
Can Santa be a thing?
Well, I mean, like, given a point blank question like that, I'm going to channel my inner Carl Rogers and completely avoid the entire question.
Okay.
Because like if a client,
I was going to say yes and no.
Okay.
That clears it up.
Sure. 100%. Yeah. Well, I mean, just to clarify, like, I had a client, actually, I've had clients ask me this all the time. It's like, what do you think? What should I do? Right.
Yeah.
And Carl Rogers was just the master of like, okay, well, like, I can't make that decision for you. Right. So, right. I mean, like if you were going to ask me that point blank, particularly as a counselor, I'd be like, okay, well, you are telling me that your experience was like this. Do you think that that's a good thing that you would want to recreate for your child? I mean, and it sounds like you're like, yeah, this was okay. But then again, particularly in the story you were just telling me, well, but my wife. Right. So you're like, if Josh was solo making the decision with your son, you'd be like, well, maybe I'd recreate this thing that my parents did and try to kind of like ease him from like Wonderland, like, and this is true to, well, we definitely know he's not. And then you said there was like a graduation between those two things. And there was never anger or hurt or betrayal feelings from your parents. But then you have to live with your wife who, it sounds like, doesn't agree with that perspective.
Yeah, and I think she's not necessarily super conflicted, but like that's a thing. And I think even we were talking like our son's cousins, they're going to grow up not with the Santa Claus. So then you have to figure out like, oh, if we do this, then
because their family's explicitly going to say he is not real.
Right. Yeah. So sure. It's a question.
In the parenting manual, one of the things that we talk about
Good plug.
Know your child. And so we also talk about how one of the greatest tools that you have as parents is your teamwork together. And you both have had very opposite experiences growing up, which leads me to believe you may need to come up with some hybrid in the middle of this. And, because there is that real place as to where some kids, like I had a drama teacher, and finding out there was no Santa Claus completely destroyed her ability to trust.
Wow.
And she questioned everything her parents said to her after that. And
you want to avoid that, by the way.
It was a really bad thing, and the question is how do we want to work with this, and how do we want to encompass this, if you want to at all? My parents did have kind of this Santa Claus thing. It was more with kind of some of my extended family. They were much more into, there's a Santa Claus. My mom and dad were much more of, there's things that Santa Claus will bring, wink, wink, that maybe he's real and maybe he's not, and let's explore this a little bit, and would kind of go, well, do you really think anyone is at the North Pole, and what about these different things? And so there was a lot of questioning to kind of help us come to the place of realizing, wait, maybe this doesn't exist,
right?
And they did this kind of with the Easter Bunny too. I mean, where's the Easter Bunny when it's not Easter? And there are things in our culture that we kind of believe in,
right?
And we have, and they're kind of there as a part of the experience of the culture,
right?
But they're not really real. You have Easter baskets, but at the same time, we fill them. The bunny doesn't come. The bunny's not real, and it's kind of a gradual thing.
Yeah.
Right, you're talking about like folk legends kinds of ideas.
Yeah, you're talking about, the mystical side, but here's things that really did happen, and here's how we can talk about those, and here's how this happens.
Yeah. And I mean, I feel like when I tell you guys this story, like some people are going to think like, man, that would really, mess this guy up. But, I was really squirrely kid, and I was always like questioning stuff and whatever. And so I kept asking all these questions about the Easter Bunny. And so they told me the Easter Bunny wanted to meet me. And so they blindfolded me and in my bedroom, the Easter Bunny, after he put the eggs out, they said that the Easter Bunny, I guess they could hear him, but I can't. But they said, to stick my hand through the blinds and that I would like shake his hand.
Like out your window?
Yeah, out my window, out my bedroom window. And I did. And I shook the Easter Bunny's hand. I think it was a duster. But hey, that gave me like another 2 or 3 years. Okay,
that's really funny.
And I do remember there's actually a video where a childhood video where I'm like figuring out that I don't think this is like legit, but they're telling me that like if I don't think it's legit, then he probably won't come, and you can see like the debate of like, and then at some point I think I just figured it all out, and I was like, well, I'm going to keep going along with it because I'm getting stuff out of it. So that was sort of my experience. But
I'm going to go along with it. I don't believe it, but boy, there's candy at the other end. So I'm going to say I believe it. There you go.
And so I guess the way that I'm kind of viewing it is yes, sort of going, year by year. And I almost view it as sort of a wink and a nod thing. Like to me, that would kind of be my solution of like, yes, but like if then he's asking a bunch of questions, I'm not going to like do some elaborate, you're not
going to have him shake the feather duster?
Right. I'm probably not going to go to that extreme to keep it alive unless he's squirrely like me. And then it was like, to me though, I could have then opened my eyes and seen it, and it wouldn't have bothered me at all. Cause I loved make believe. I thought my backyard was an army zone. Then I would turn it into a golf course, a shooting range. I mean, so to me that was just another day, but I can definitely see how there are some people who are more concrete than me, and that would probably be tough.
Well, that goes back to what Eric was saying about know your child, right? If you think that this ruse we'll use the feather duster, right? If the kid found out about it, it would crush them. Do you want to roll those dice of, the kid moves the blinds apart and they see daddy holding a feather duster, right? And that would just it would cause them to feel betrayed or hurt or whatever.
Yeah.
Then maybe that's not a good idea.
Yeah. So one of the other interesting problems of this is, there are people that do feel like, well, the way that I view it is how everyone should. And then they say things and then other parents lose it because they're like, you're not gonna take that away from my child. You're not gonna whatever. So, I guess the thought,
that was my caveat at the beginning of the episode.
Yeah. So I guess the thought would be, if that is where you're going to go, it's probably best to not then push that on everyone. Tell your kid, don't go around school yelling to everyone how dumb they are because they,
Well, my wife will tell our kids all the time, they're still wee little monsters, about a variety of topics. It's like, there's people who don't believe the things that we believe, because it doesn't matter what you believe about anything, that's going to be true, right? If you believe this or that, there's somebody who disagrees with you, whether it's about the Easter Bunny or anything else. But her follow-up is always, but we're nice to them.
Yeah.
Right. So it's like, there can be something that somebody disagrees with you about, but you still need to be nice to them about it.
Right.
And maybe particularly when we're talking to our wee little children, we maybe we just don't talk about that. Right.
Yeah.
Because that's just not that they disagree and you continue to be nice to them. And, maybe they don't have the intellectual horsepower to have a conversation around why they disagree. But this is probably a conversation for another day. Maybe we need to write notes.
Yeah.
But there's that old adage of don't talk about religion or politics. Right. My personal belief is that we've said that for so long that we are incapable of having any kind of discussion around religion or politics with anyone anymore.
Right.
We've chosen that you don't talk about it, and now we can't.
Yeah.
So, and to get back to our Santa Claus point of how do you have a tradition in your home that may conflict with a tradition in someone else's home? And, you're not intentionally trying to ruin anyone's childhood,
right.
Either as an adult or your children believing something that their cousins or their neighbors or their whatever classmates don't believe.
Right.
Because you may have one side of the family that's not up for Santa Claus.
Right. Yeah.
Sure, or vice versa, right? Yeah, you're not up for Santa Claus. They are.
Well,
whichever way.
Your wife's side, is not up for Santa Claus.
Yeah.
And so there's going to be cousins,
right,
that are going to be in that boat.
Right. And I think too, this probably plays a little bit of it. I never grew up with the idea. Santa wasn't used as this, as this, there's Santa and he's watching you and he saw you do that.
See the title of our episode, yeah.
So he just it was just kind of like at Christmas, this jolly guy comes, he always thinks I was good. Surely he truly can't see me or he would know that I hadn't been good. And he just brings me
Santa
stuff.
always brings me presents and I know I've not been good.
Right.
So he's either not real or blind.
Exactly.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, that whole concept is based on the parents seeing their kids.
100%. Well, it's boogeyman parenting to bring that back around. Yeah.
There was an episode of Little House on the Prairie where two brothers in one family, and the older brother, completely destroyed his little brother's belief in Santa Claus. He's like, he's not real. It's just our parents who do this. And the little brother's like, no, that's not true. And so he was off and he was crying, and Dad found him, and he's like, what's going on? And he's like, well, this is what, older brother said. And so the dad, he smoothed over that very, very well. And basically is kind of like, Santa Claus can't make it all the way around the world in one night, especially where we live. And so things are kind of dropped ahead of time type thing, And so he worked with that, and literally the older boy, so the younger boy got all of these great presents and all of these things in his stocking, and the older boy got rocks.
Whoa.
And like a tin cup or something.
Whoa.
Wow. Yeah.
And the dad was like, because the little brother's like, see, he is real. Yeah. He is real, and, the dad and the older boy had a talk, and so that we don't do that type thing. Where your brother still believes in this, you don't take that away from him, in that fashion. I heard somebody on the radio who was talking about, he has an hour every year about, I think it's every week he does this during this time. Defend Santa Claus to me. Defend the belief of Santa Claus.
And he takes callers or whatever.
And he takes callers. And I listened the other day where he had a caller that called in. And it was a brother and sister, and they were growing up. And this was the brother who was calling in. And his sister was like, is there, maybe Santa Claus doesn't exist and these presents, come from our parents. And the caller said to his younger sister, are you kidding? These presents are proof that Santa Claus does exist. You really think our parents would spend this kind of money on us? And the host was like, that is the greatest defense of Santa Claus I have ever heard.
You think our parents would buy this?
For us?
That's pretty funny.
Kind of think it goes back to, we haven't been good this year. Right. Or any year.
Yes. Well, yeah, whatever Santa's problem was, I was always thankful. Because, I would think they'd be like, oh, you've been a very good boy this year. And I'm like, well, I'm glad he can't see in my school and how many check marks are on my name on the board because they were added up. But yeah, so I think basically, if I'm understanding this right, it is a family by family decision, and you really need to take into account the individual child and sort of where they're at,
or children,
and
because you may get different slices.
True. Yes, and it's just not one of those easy yes or no answers. So.
In the world of parenting, there are very few easy yes or no answers. That's why
true.
we wrote a book on it.
Exactly. That's why you need our parenting manual, which you can find at our site, empoweringchoices.community. And we hope that you have a great Christmas with your family, and we will see you on the next episode.
And make sure you leave Santa the milk and cookies like you're supposed to.
Exactly.
Just make sure they're the ones Dad likes.
There you go.
Yes. All right. We'll see you on the next one.